1.3 million votes has decided the top 10 sci-fi series of all time, and the list is freaking awesome. So let's discuss it here. Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV movie channel. Now, first of all, I've got to tell you that this list has been put together by Watchworthy, that is powered by Ranker. There was 1.3 million votes by the general public to generate this list. So unlike a lot of these top 10 lists, it's not been decided by some bloody YouTuber like me. It's not been decided by some reporter or just some bloke who's written the story. It's actually been voted for by us. And 1.3 million votes? That gives us, I think, a pretty good idea that this list is really what the consensus of people believe. Now, there's going to be things on this list that you don't agree with. And some of the shows on this list aren't maybe the most, generally popular sci-fi shows ever made. But let's get into it. And I will tell you exactly what I think as we go along. In at number 10, Star Trek, the original series. It's the daddy, isn't it? Star Trek, the original series, has maybe not aged particularly well for some of the episodes, but some of the episodes are iconic. Some of the episodes are genuinely still today some of the greatest sci-fi we've ever seen. And actually, you could argue that Strange New Worlds is remaking the original series and copying actually a lot of those storylines. They're genuinely important in our culture. And I would actually argue that some of the episodes of the original series changed our culture for the better. We've been trying to live up to some of the expectations that were laid out in the original series of Star Trek ever since. It's an ideal that humanity should aim for. And, we're not there yet. But from a television point of view, 4 or 5 episodes of the original series still stand up today and are still excellent sci-fi. So yeah, it's the daddy of the sci-fi. It's the show really that started the genre in lots of ways. It was proper grown-up science fiction when a lot of the other stuff was maybe just for kids. So yeah, Star Trek in the top 10 of this list, of course. In at number 9, the X-Files. Now, I would actually argue that on this list, this is probably the most... It's the show that probably had the most wide appeal. Particularly in the early series of the X-Files, it was the most popular show on television. It made David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson genuinely big celebrities. They were stars. The Will They Won't They was genuinely a national obsession for a little while. I would argue that there's only one other show on this series that actually comes close. So from a general popularity point of view, most definitely the X-Files deserves to be on this list. But from an actual television show point of view, was it actually good? Oh, God, yeah. Particularly the first series was excellent. We'd never really seen anything quite like it before. Again, it was grown up. Again, it was mysterious. But it was kind of like sexy as well. And it was actually genuinely intriguing. It was more like a sci-fi soap opera in some ways. The Will They Won't They again between Fox and Mulder genuinely became iconic. There are songs written about it. So, yeah, number 9 on this list, 100%. The show definitely maybe outstayed its welcome. It stayed on the air longer than it should have done. And I would argue as well that a couple of the movies and little mini-series they've done since have not been very good. But for the initial impact it had in those first 3-4 seasons, excellent sci-fi and generally changed the genre. Number 8, the Orville. Now, the fans of the Orville are obsessive about it, and I'm one of them. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So I kind of wish that Paramount had just let Seth MacFarlane make a Star Trek show, but they didn't. So he made his own. And I think that even though there was maybe a little bit too much Seth MacFarlane humor in the first couple of seasons, forced on him by executives, genuinely and honestly, the Orville Horizons, New Horizons, that was out last year, was grown up proper sci-fi. It still had elements of humor, but it was grown up proper sci-fi, and it was brilliant sci-fi. And if they don't come back for another series, it's genuinely a crime against science fiction. But they're going to. Number 7, Battlestar Galactica. Now, it doesn't actually say whether that's the original or the rebooted version of Battlestar Galactica, but let's assume it's the Ronald D. Moore version. The miniseries, hand on heart, the miniseries of Battlestar Galactica is some of the best science fiction I've ever seen. It had such a massive impact on me. The big, tall, blonde Cylon snapping the baby's neck genuinely made me go, what the hell? I honestly think if you're talking about a lot of these series sort of changed the genre, and people have been copying Battlestar Galactica ever since. You can actually argue that one of my favorite shows, Stargate, copied Battlestar Galactica when they did Stargate Universe. The tone and the style of the show was very similar. And a lot of other shows have copied it since as well. That's always the sign of a really game-changing television show when other people start copying you. If you think about The Matrix and the amount of movies that copied that after it. So Battlestar Galactica, number 7 on this list. Hell yeah. Again, the show towards the end maybe outstayed its welcome. I didn't like that Caprica load of rubbish. And to be honest, I stopped watching Battlestar Galactica first time around towards the end. I thought it really lost its way. But the first season, and in particular the miniseries, were excellent. Beyond excellent, to be honest. Number 6 on the list is the only other show that I think can challenge the X-Files for general popularity. And it's Stranger Things. Again, it's probably the most popular show on Netflix. It's become, people are obsessed about it. The actors are everywhere. You know, Billy Bobby Brown is a model now and whatever else, and doing lots of movies and etc. But on top of that, it's a genuinely brilliant television. It is mysterious. We never know what the hell is going on with Stranger Things. You never know who's going to die. You never know what's going to happen next. They've been able to sort of like change themselves as they've gone along as well. And there's been a new great villain each year, but while still keeping its identity. It's got brilliant characters you genuinely care about. And I just think it's been a shame, to be honest, in a way, that it's been a victim of its own success, that we've not got to see more of it, because it was so popular. The actors then got so in demand that it's been a real struggle to then make more. And the last series is going to, well, we're going to have to wait for it, but it's going to be, I think, excellent. And I'm really glad we're getting a little bit more Stranger Things. Number 5 on the list, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now, for me, Star Trek: The Next Generation is my Star Trek. It's the Star Trek I grew up on. It's the Star Trek that was on TV when I was like 13, 14. It's probably the TV show that got me hooked on sci-fi. If it wasn't for The Next Generation, I'm not sure I would have done. It's the show that made me go out and start looking for more sci-fi. I think it did change everything. I do actually think Deep Space Nine and Voyager are better than Star Trek: The Next Generation in lots of ways. The production value is way better. But the characters from Star Trek: The Next Generation will stay with us forever. Data, Picard, Riker, LaForge, all of these characters will stay with us forever. They spawned one very good movie and a couple, not so much. But they genuinely, again, changed the genre for a little while. And it was the first time I think we saw really expensive, high production value sci-fi, that this wasn't a sci-fi show on the Sci-Fi Channel, you know, that's done reasonably cheaply, that has some very dodgy special effects, etc., etc. This was actually a highly expensive sci-fi show made for grown-ups, made with the intent to be good-looking television. It allowed other shows to happen after it. A little bit like the original series that was like first of its kind, but then it allowed them to make other shows. The Next Generation did the same, and we got a lot of really brilliant sci-fi off the back of the popularity of The Next Generation, and thank God for it. Number 4, my favorite show of all time. What might that be? Stargate SG1. In at number 4, I think that's amazing. For again, a show that's not been on our screens for nearly 20 years. That is incredible that this has made this list. And just one more indicator that it will be back. A revival of Stargate SG1 is what I'm hearing. So, number 4 on this list. Absolutely bloody incredible. And it deserves to be there. If you're talking about characters, I'm saying about great characters and Star Trek The Next Generation stuff. SG1. SG1 had some of the best characters we've ever seen in a sci-fi show. Jack O'Neill, Sam Carter, Daniel Jackson, Teal'c, indeed, are really the pinnacle of brilliant sci-fi characters. The show went on for 10 years, broke records, and it reinvented itself several times. Now, for me, Stargate Atlantis was just as good. It didn't ever quite have the popularity of SG1, but it was brilliant. SGU was getting better. But Stargate will 100% be back on our screens at some point in the near future and wholeheartedly deserves to be in number 4 in this top 10. Number 3, The Mandalorian. Now, I suppose Star Wars had to appear somewhere on this list. And The Mandalorian is brilliant. The Mandalorian, I would actually say, is the best of the new Star Wars stuff. The movies, not so good. The TV, okay. I think it's very clear as well that you know how good the character Mandalorian is, that when they did the Book of Boba Fett, the only 2 good episodes of the series are actually the 2 that Boba Fett wasn't in that focused on the Mandalorian. So, great TV series. I've seen the first episode of the new series. It's great. I do find it a little slow at times. I do wish it would pick up the pace a little bit. I actually nearly stopped watching it in the first couple of episodes because the pace was so slow. But it's got to still be a Star Wars series, and Star Wars can be a little slow paced. So it's a Star Wars show. I love it. I don't think it deserves to be in this list, or definitely not this high up anyway. If you're actually comparing it to things like Stargate SG1, 10 seasons of brilliance, even Stranger Things, I think this is a little high, but it may be a little high because it's the sci-fi show that's actually on our screens at the moment. So maybe it's, a little bit falsely been pushed up this list because of that. And also the new series coming out. So also, I suppose Star Wars fans had to vote for something. Number 2 on the list. Probably the most realistic grown-up sci-fi show ever made. One of the cleverest sci-fi shows ever made. And again, if you want to talk about obsessive fans, the Expanse fans are the really obsessive fans. They love this freaking show. Now, again, I'm told that this will return at some point, but not on Amazon. And we hope that we will get to see more Expanse in the future, potentially on Apple TV or something like that. It never really got the widespread popularity of other sci-fi shows on this list. A lot of people just didn't get it. Amazon didn't advertise it enough. Netflix didn't advertise it enough. That is the one downside maybe of streaming services. They don't tend to actually advertise their TV shows a great deal. They just sort of hope people will find them. But anyway, The Expanse deserved to have a much bigger audience. It never quite got it. But it was, as I say, the most realistic, most grown up, most intelligent sci-fi we've probably ever had. And if it ends at season 6, it really will be a crime. Let's hope we can see more of the Expanse universe. So what's at number 1? A sci-fi show that I've not mentioned so far. We can argue about whether it deserves to be at number 1. It probably doesn't, if I'm 100% honest. If it had lasted longer and we'd got several seasons of it, then maybe. But we only got 14 episodes. So putting it in a number 1 is a bit dodgy. But I love the show so much I can't argue with it. And it's probably the sci-fi show I've rewatched the most. Firefly. Now, this is a show that they keep threatening to reboot, and appearing at top of this list just makes that more likely. But I hope they don't. because it really was lightning in a bottle. It really was the most interesting sci-fi show that was so badly handled by Fox. It died in its infancy. It really did. But it's a show that I adore. As I said, I have rewatched this so many goddamn times. You wouldn't. I was watching it yesterday, literally yesterday. I watched The Train Job yesterday. The characters were just extraordinary. They loved each other off set, and it shows. And they apparently still have a Serenity Valley WhatsApp group, and they still talk to each other all the time. If the only way they could bring the show back is if they got Nathan Fillion to come back, they need to cancel The Rookie and bring Nathan Fillion back, and then I'd watch it. Other than that, don't reboot it. But it was a crime that this show got mishandled the way it did. But I also say that it was advertised wrong. Even I didn't want to watch it when it came out. I thought Space Western, that looks stupid. I'm not watching that. I only watched it when the DVD box set came out and it was 20 quid. And I thought I'll give it a go. And then fell in love with it immediately. I was so glad we at very least got a movie out of it. A movie that some people have criticized and I actually I adore. I thought it was great. They should never have killed Wash. But other than that, Leaf on the Wind. Other than that, it's a great movie. I would love to see it return with Nathan Fillion and the rest of the stars coming back in a revival at some point. Let's hope so. I'm not sure about it being at number one of this list. I will be honest, but at the same time, I can't argue with it because it's a show I love with all my heart. So that's the top 10 list as voted by 1.3 million people. What would have been your top 10? Do you agree with me on some of the maybe criticisms that I've got on the list? Or is there something that these 1.3 million people have forgotten about? Get in the comments and tell me what you think. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out. And you can join us on Patreon, where you get to see most of our videos first for a small fee. No adverts. As always, please stay safe. I'll see you next time.